Tell us in the comments where in the world you are watching from and at what time, so I can get to know you better. To support the channel for free, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Imagine a structure so colossal, so ancient, that for nearly 4 millennia, it stood as the tallest man-made object on Earth. A monument, built with a precision that baffles modern engineers, aligned almost perfectly with the cardinal points, and shrouded in mysteries that have captivated humanity for centuries. Today we journey back in time to the arid plains of the Giza Plateau to uncover the secrets of the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid of Khufu. How did a Bronze Age civilization, with only the simplest of tools, achieve such an architectural marvel? What was its true purpose? And what hidden chambers might still lie within its massive stone walls? Join us as we peel back the layers of sand and time to explore the engineering history and enduring legacy of the Great Pyramid of Giza. In the heart of the 4th dynasty, around 2580 BCE, Egypt was a kingdom forged by the gods and ruled by a living one. Pharaoh Khufu, son of Sneferu, and second king of this powerful dynasty, was not merely a ruler. He was Horus embodied, a divine intermediary between the heavens and the earth. His ambition was not for mortal conquest or ephemeral wealth, but for something far greater: eternity. For a god-king, death was not an end, but a transition, a dangerous journey through the underworld, to be reborn in the celestial afterlife alongside the sun god, Ra. To ensure this journey's success, a vessel was required, a monument so immense, so perfect, and so enduring that it would serve as an eternal launching point for his soul, a stairway to heaven that would stand against the ravages of time itself. This was the genesis of the Great Pyramid. Khufu's vision transcended anything his father, the great builder Sneferu, had accomplished with his bent and red pyramids at Dashur. Those were groundbreaking experiments. Khufu's project was to be the definitive statement of divine power. He envisioned a structure that was mathematically perfect, astronomically aligned, and built on a scale that would humble all who gazed upon it. It was to be a machine for resurrection, its inner chambers and shafts precisely engineered to guide his spirit, or Ka, towards the circumpolar stars, the unchanging eternal heavens. This project would consume the Egyptian state, requiring the mobilization of an entire nation's resources, manpower, and ingenuity for 2 decades. It was a declaration not only of Khufu's personal divinity, but of Egypt's cosmic order, its stability, and its technological supremacy. The ambition was staggering: to quarry, transport, and lift millions of tons of stone with Bronze Age technology, creating a structure that would remain the tallest man-made object on Earth for nearly 4 millennia. It was a gamble against oblivion, a king's audacious attempt to carve his name not just into stone, but into the fabric of eternity itself. A vision as grand as Khufu's required a foundation worthy of a god. The selection of a site for his eternal monument was not a matter of convenience, but a sacred calculation of geology, theology, and astronomy. The chosen location was the Giza Plateau, a limestone bedrock outcrop rising on the west bank of the Nile, the traditional direction of the setting sun and the land of the dead. This site was strategically brilliant. Geologically, the plateau offered an immensely strong and stable foundation, a solid rock base capable of supporting the pyramid's projected weight of nearly 6 million tons without risk of subsidence. The builders would even incorporate a natural mound in the plateau's bedrock into the core of the pyramid, saving significant labor and materials. Logistically, Giza was perfect. It was close enough to the capital city of Memphis to allow for royal oversight and the efficient management of resources. More importantly, its proximity to the Nile's annual inundation meant that a harbor could be constructed at the foot of the plateau. This would allow massive barges, laden with granite from Aswan and fine white limestone from Tura, to deliver their precious cargo almost directly to the construction site during the flood season. The plateau itself was a source of building material, providing the lower quality limestone used for the pyramid's core blocks. But beyond the practical, Giza held a profound cosmic significance. The plateau was seen as a sacred landscape, a place where the earthly and divine realms could intersect. The architects and priests would have meticulously surveyed the site, ensuring the pyramid could be aligned with breathtaking precision to the 4 cardinal points. This celestial alignment was non-negotiable. It transformed the structure from a mere tomb into a cosmically integrated engine of resurrection, anchoring the pharaoh's journey to the eternal, unmoving stars in the northern sky. The choice of Giza was the critical first step in turning Khufu's abstract ambition into a tangible, earth-shaking reality. Behind every great monument is a great mind. For the Great Pyramid, that mind belonged to Hemiunu, Khufu's vizier, and most likely his nephew. As the overseer of all royal works, Hemiunu was the master architect, the grand strategist, who would translate the pharaoh's divine ambition into a concrete blueprint. His life-size statue, discovered in his tomb near the pyramid, depicts a man of substance and authority, his features realistic and devoid of idealistic flourish. This was a man of immense intellect and practicality, the chief executive of the most ambitious construction project in human history. Hemiunu's design was a masterwork of mathematics and engineering. He conceived of a true pyramid with a square base of approximately 230 meters per side and a slope angle of 51 degrees and 52 minutes, a precise geometry that would carry the structure to its intended height of 147 meters. This was not guesswork. The design encoded sophisticated mathematical knowledge, including an approximation of pi. The sheer organizational genius required is difficult to comprehend. Hemiunu would have been responsible for everything: developing the architectural plans, calculating the millions of stone blocks needed, organizing the vast workforce of skilled craftsmen and laborers, and managing the colossal supply chain that stretched hundreds of miles up the Nile. He would have overseen the surveying teams who laid out the pyramid's foundations with an accuracy that modern engineers would find challenging, with the sides aligned to the cardinal directions to within a fraction of a degree. He designed the intricate internal structure, including the ascending and descending passages, the mysterious Queen's Chamber, and the magnificent Grand Gallery, leading to the King's Chamber. This final chamber was itself an engineering marvel, roofed with 9 massive granite slabs weighing over 400 tons, with 5 stress-relieving chambers built above it to protect the king's resting place from the crushing weight of the pyramid. Hemiunu's plan was a symphony of logistics, geometry, and sheer will, a testament to a single human mind organizing a nation to build a stairway to the stars. The pyramid was not built, but born from the very rock of Egypt. The project began with a geological assault on an unprecedented scale, orchestrated across two primary locations. The bulk of the pyramid's 2.5 million blocks, the core stones, were hewn directly from the Giza plateau itself, a logistical masterstroke that minimized transport for most of the structure's mass. But for the pyramid's sacred outer skin and its vital inner chambers, only the finest materials would suffice. Across the Nile, at the quarries of Tura, workers descended into subterranean galleries to extract a pristine, white limestone. This was the casing stone, prized for its purity and brightness. Using copper chisels and wooden mallets, quarrymen would cut deep channels around a desired block. They would then drive wooden wedges into slots and soak them with water. As the wood expanded, it exerted immense pressure, cracking the giant block free from the bedrock with a deafening groan. These gleaming white blocks, weighing several tons each, would be carefully dressed and then hauled on sledges to the riverbank, ready for their journey to Giza. Far to the south, nearly 800 kilometers up the Nile near modern-day Aswan, an even more challenging task was underway. Here lay the source of the rose-colored granite, an incredibly hard, igneous rock, chosen for its strength and symbolic significance. This stone was destined for the heart of the pyramid, the king's chamber, its sarcophagus, and the massive roof beams designed to bear the mountain of stone above. Quarrying granite with Bronze Age tools was a monumental effort. Workers used hard dolerite pounders, weighing several kilograms each, to painstakingly bash the rock, slowly pulverizing it to create trenches. This grueling, repetitive work, performed under the searing Egyptian sun, was how they freed the colossal monoliths, some weighing over 50 tons. These giants were then maneuvered onto massive wooden barges for the long, perilous journey downstream to the Giza harbor, a testament to the raw power and unwavering resolve of a civilization mobilized to serve its god-king. The path to Anne Boleyn's side was not a simple road. It was a feat of engineering that defied the known world. King Henry VIII, driven by a desire that had become a state obsession, faced obstacles as immovable as the great stones of antiquity. The first and largest of these was the papacy, a spiritual and political monolith whose authority had stood for 1,000 years. Pope Clement VII was trapped, a pawn of the Holy Roman Emperor, Charles V, who was none other than Catherine of Aragon's nephew. To grant Henry's annulment would be to declare his aunt a royal concubine, and her daughter Mary a bastard. It was a political impossibility. This was the first million-ton block. The second was Catherine herself, a queen of immense pride and piety, who refused to be set aside. She argued her case with dignity and legal force, wielding the power of her imperial connections and the weight of public sympathy. The third block was English tradition and law, deeply intertwined with the Catholic faith. To break with Rome was not merely a matter of the king's heart, it was to reshape the very soul of the nation. The initial architect of this impossible task, Cardinal Wolsey, found the weight too great. He pushed and pulled, using diplomacy and threats, but the blocks would not budge. His failure was his ruin, a dramatic fall from grace that served as a warning to all who followed. But where Wolsey, the Grand Cardinal, had failed, a new kind of engineer emerged from the shadows: Thomas Cromwell. A man of humble origins and boundless ambition, Cromwell saw that the blocks could not be moved within the existing system. The system itself had to be broken. He understood that the power to move these mountains lay not in Rome, but in Parliament. He began to draft the tools, the legislative levers, and pulleys that would slowly, painstakingly transport the immense weight of religious and political authority from the Tiber to the Thames, all to place a crown on Anne Boleyn's head. With the old architect Wolsey swept away, the new builders, led by Thomas Cromwell and the more pliable Thomas Cranmer, began laying the foundations for a new English world. This was not a task of brute force, but of meticulous, almost fanatical precision. The goal was to construct a new legal and religious reality, one where the king's will was supreme and Anne Boleyn's position was unassailable. The cornerstone of this new edifice was the doctrine of royal supremacy. The ground first had to be leveled. This meant systematically dismantling the power of the clergy and their allegiance to a foreign pontiff. The submission of the clergy in 1532 was a critical step, forcing the Church in England to surrender its power to make law without the king's assent. Each piece of legislation that followed was laid with perfect alignment to the next. The 1533 Act in Restraint of Appeals was the masterstroke. Drafted by Cromwell, it declared that England was an empire, governed by one supreme head, the king, and that all spiritual and legal matters would be settled within the realm. It was a declaration of legal independence, a wall built to keep the Pope's influence out forever. This act was the foundation upon which Anne's future rested. It empowered the newly appointed Archbishop of Canterbury, Thomas Cranmer, to finally hear and rule on the king's great matter. The old structure, loyal to Rome, was being leveled, and its rubble used to build the foundations of the Church of England. Every law was a stone, every parliamentary session a measurement to ensure the structure was true. For Henry, this was about securing his dynasty for eternity with a legitimate male heir from Anne. For Anne and her reformist faction, it was about building a new kind of English faith. But for all involved, it was a breathtakingly audacious project, constructing a new nation on principles that were, to many, nothing short of heresy. The foundations were laid, the legal machinery was in place, but the final, monumental lift remained: how to remove one queen and consecrate another. For years, the court had debated the method. Was it through papal negotiation? Was it through theological argument? This was the great ramp debate of the Tudor Court. All previous methods had failed. The stone of Catherine's marriage was too heavy, the height to Anne's throne too great. The solution, when it came, was a marvel of political and personal audacity, a ramp built of secrecy and speed. By late 1532, Anne Boleyn knew she was pregnant. The theoretical debate was over, a practical solution was needed immediately. The heir, the entire justification for this national upheaval, could not be born illegitimate. The architect of this final maneuver was Henry himself, driven by Anne's pregnancy. On or around the 25th of January 1533, he and Anne were married in a secret ceremony. It was a breathtaking gamble. At that moment, Henry was, by the laws of England and the Catholic Church, a bigamist. The stone was now halfway up the ramp, suspended precariously. The final push came from Thomas Cranmer. With the Act in Restraint of Appeals now law, Cranmer convened a special court at Dunstable Priory in May 1533. Catherine, refusing to recognize its authority, did not attend. Her absence was taken as an admission of default. On May 23rd, Cranmer declared her marriage to Henry null and void from the beginning. 5 days later, he pronounced the king's secret marriage to Anne valid. The stone had been lifted into place. The final act was the spectacle of coronation. On June 1st, 1533, a visibly pregnant Anne Boleyn was crowned Queen of England in a ceremony of unparalleled magnificence. The ramp had worked. Through a combination of legislative force, religious reinterpretation, and a secret vow, Henry had achieved the impossible. He had lifted a new queen to the throne, defying an emperor and a pope. The question that now hung in the air was whether the structure they had built could possibly bear the weight. With Anne crowned, a new city began to rise on the foundations of the old. The royal court became a bustling village of builders, all dedicated to constructing and decorating the new reality. At its center was the queen herself, no longer a royal mistress, but the very heart of power. Her family, the Boleyns and the Howards, were the master craftsmen, elevated to the highest offices of state. Her brother, George Boleyn, Lord Rochford, was a prominent courtier and diplomat. Her father, the Earl of Wiltshire, held key positions. They and their allies were the primary beneficiaries of this new order, their fortunes inextricably linked to Anne's. This village was also populated by a new class of intellectual and spiritual builders, the religious reformers. Men like Hugh Latimer and Nicholas Shaxton were appointed as bishops, protected by Queen Anne's patronage. For them, Anne was not just a new queen. She was a champion of the evangelical cause, a patron of vernacular scripture, who could help build a new, reformed English church, free from the superstitions of Rome. The court buzzed with energy, with lavish masks, tournaments, and a sophisticated culture modeled on the French courts, where Anne had spent her youth. She was a patron of the arts, a fashion icon, and a formidable political player. But outside the glittering confines of this workers' village, the sentiment was often hostile. The common people, who had loved the pious Catherine, saw Anne as a usurper, whispering the name, the Great Whore. The traditionalist nobility and clergy, forced to swear oaths against their conscience, were silent but resentful workers on a project they despised. Figures of immense integrity, like Sir Thomas More and Bishop John Fisher, became martyrs, refusing to accept the new structure and paying with their lives. This city of builders was a vibrant but precarious place. Its existence depended entirely on one thing: the Queen's ability to provide the king with his promised male heir. Every day she remained pregnant with the future of England was a day the city stood strong. But its foundations rested not on stone, but on the fragile hope of a son. If the Tudor Court was a grand and complex structure, then King Henry VIII's will was its innermost chamber, a sanctum sealed by ambition and dynastic obsession. This was the king's chamber, not a place of wood and tapestry, but a metaphorical fortress carved from the granite of absolute power and patriarchal imperative. Anne had spent years navigating the outer passages, skillfully maneuvering through the labyrinthine corridors of courtship and politics to arrive at its threshold. She believed she had won access, that she was to be the cherished treasure within. But she misunderstood the chamber's true purpose. It was not a sanctuary for a beloved queen, but a crucible designed for a single function: to forge a male heir. Its walls were the unyielding laws of succession, its ceiling the crushing weight of expectation. After the birth of Princess Elizabeth, a profound disappointment to the king, the air within this chamber grew cold and thin. The initial warmth of Henry's passion receded, revealing the stark, unforgiving stone beneath. Every month that passed without a new pregnancy was another layer of granite sealing Anne in. Her miscarriages, particularly the loss of a son in early 1536, were catastrophic structural failures. They were not seen as personal tragedies, but as failures of her primary function. Inside this chamber, there was only one measure of worth, one artifact of significance sought by its kingly architect: a prince. The sarcophagus at its center was the royal cradle, and it remained stubbornly empty. Anne was trapped within this fortress of Henry's making. The love and charm that had been her keys to entry were now useless against the cold, hard reality of her situation. The king's chamber had become her prison, a place where the echo of a baby's cry was replaced by the deafening silence of dynastic failure, a silence that heralded her doom. Adjacent to the granite fortress of the king's will was the Queen's Chamber, a title that suggested partnership, security, and influence. For Anne Boleyn, this title was a tragic misnomer. While her apartments were opulent, filled with French fashions, Renaissance art, and the symbols of her new station, the chamber of her power was built on foundations of sand. Unlike the king's chamber, which held the kingdom's ultimate authority, Anne's was a borrowed space, its grandeur entirely dependent on the king's favor. It was a chamber of mysteries, where every shadow held a secret and every whisper could be a weapon. Her own ladies-in-waiting, the very women who attended to her daily needs, formed a complex web of loyalty and betrayal. Some, like her sister-in-law, Jane Parker, Lady Rochford, would become conduits for the poison that would ultimately destroy her. Every light-hearted comment, every flirtatious jest, every moment of frustration or familiarity was observed, recorded, and often twisted. This chamber, meant to be her sanctuary, became an echo chamber for her enemies' plots. The true mystery was not what happened within its walls, but how the events were perceived from without. Thomas Cromwell, the king's chief minister, became the master interpreter of these mysteries. He gathered the fragmented whispers, the half-truths, and the outright lies, weaving them into a coherent narrative of treason. Anne's chamber was not a seat of power, but a stage upon which her enemies could project her downfall. She was the queen, yet she was powerless to stop the flow of information that seeped through the very walls of her private world. The title was a beautiful illusion, a gilded cage whose bars were being forged in the fires of courtly conspiracy, proving that in Henry's court, the Queen's chamber was the most dangerous room of all. Connecting the private chambers of the King and Queen to the public life of the court was the Grand Gallery, a breathtaking architectural masterpiece of perception and power. This was Anne's domain, the stage for her magnificent, if brief, reign. It was a long ascending corridor, showcasing the splendor of her new Tudor dynasty. Here, Anne was not the trapped wife or the precarious queen, but the star of a dazzling European court. She presided over a cultural revolution, importing French sophistication, music, and intellectual fervor. The gallery was lined not with stone, but with lavish tapestries, the air filled with the sounds of lutes and the debates of reformers and poets. The events held within this space were legendary. Sumptuous banquets, elaborate masques, where courtiers disguised themselves as gods and goddesses, and thrilling jousts, where the king himself would compete for his queen's favor. This was political theater of the highest order, an architectural marvel designed to project an image of stability, legitimacy, and divine approval. Every detail, from the cut of Anne's gown to the subject of a courtly poem, was a carefully placed stone in this grand construction. It was meant to awe foreign ambassadors and silence domestic dissenters, a testament to the glorious future the Boleyn Union would bring. But like all grand structures, it had hidden stresses. The immense cost of this pageantry alienated the old nobility. The public, still loyal to the memory of Catherine of Aragon, viewed the gallery's splendor with resentment. And crucially, this grand, upward-sloping gallery was designed to lead to one place, the king's chamber. Its entire purpose was to glorify him and deliver him his prize. When that prize, a son, failed to materialize, the magnificent facade of the grand gallery began to crack, revealing the fragile structure beneath. Within the great and terrible architecture of Anne's life, there existed enigmatic shafts, narrow and unseen passages that bypassed the grand public galleries and private chambers. These were the channels of conspiracy, ambition, and ultimately, destiny. One such shaft was Anne's own ambition, a focused, unswerving drive aimed directly at the stars. It was her pathway to the crown, a route she navigated with intelligence and daring. She sought not just to be a queen, but to found a dynasty, to place her bloodline among the constellations of European royalty. For a time, it seemed this shaft would lead her to that celestial destiny. But other, darker shafts ran through the court, hidden from plain sight. Through these channels, Thomas Cromwell funneled a meticulously crafted stream of poison directly to the paranoid heart of the king's chamber. Whispers of infidelity with her musician, Mark Smeaton, accusations of plotting with courtiers like Henry Norris, and the ultimate, unthinkable charge of incest with her own brother, George. These were not public pronouncements made in the Grand Gallery, but insidious messages delivered through the secret shafts of the state's intelligence network. Were these pathways to the stars? In a dark and twisted sense, yes. The conspiracies that traveled through these shafts did not lead to the dynastic glory Anne craved. Instead, they propelled her towards a different kind of immortality. By destroying her mortal life, her enemies ensured her legend. The accusations, amplified in the echo chamber of the court, sealed her fate, turning her path from the throne to the scaffold. Her execution was the terminal point of these enigmatic shafts, a final brutal destination that transformed her from a temporary political player into a permanent, tragic star in the firmament of history, forever defined by her dramatic and fatal ascent. For over 2 decades, the Giza Plateau had been a scene of organized chaos, a testament to human will and engineering. Now, the final, crowning moment was at hand. The last block to be placed on the Great Pyramid was not just another stone, it was the Pyramidion, the sacred capstone that would complete the monument and connect it to the heavens. This was not merely an architectural flourish, but the structure's spiritual apex, the point where the earthly realm touched the divine. Ancient texts refer to it as the Benbenét, a name derived from the sacred Benben stone, a conical relic housed in the Temple of Ra at Heliopolis, which was believed to be the primordial mound upon which the sun god first appeared at the dawn of creation. Khufu's Pyramidion was a man-made replica of this celestial object, designed to capture the very essence of the sun. While its exact fate is lost to time, historical accounts and archaeological evidence suggest it was a marvel to behold. Carved from fine Tura limestone or granite, it was likely sheathed in electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, or perhaps pure gold. Its purpose was to be a beacon. As the sun began its journey across the sky, the Pyramidion would catch its first rays, setting the pyramid's peak ablaze with a divine light. that would have been visible for miles across the Nile Valley. The logistical challenge of this final act is staggering. How did the ancient Egyptians lift this multi-ton, exquisitely finished object to a height of nearly 500 feet? The great ramps used for the bulk of the construction may have been too cumbersome for this delicate final maneuver. It's more likely they employed a system of massive wooden levers and counterweights, a painstaking and perilous operation requiring absolute precision. The slightest miscalculation could have sent the priceless capstone plummeting to the ground, a disastrous omen. When it was finally settled into place, a collective sigh of relief and awe must have swept through the thousands of workers below. The pyramid was complete. It was no longer a construction site, but a perfect, gleaming white mountain with a golden peak, a sacred symbol of resurrection, and a permanent stairway for the pharaoh's soul to ascend to the stars and join the gods among the imperishable northern constellations. With the pyramid complete, it stood as a silent, expectant vessel, awaiting its divine occupant. Upon the death of Pharaoh Khufu, a meticulously planned series of rituals honed over centuries was set into motion. The king's body was first taken to the Ibu, or place of purification, where it was washed in the sacred waters of the Nile. From there, it entered the Per-Nefer, the House of Beauty, for the 70-day process of mummification. Priests, acting with surgical precision, removed the internal organs, leaving only the heart, which was believed to be the seat of intelligence and conscience. The body was then packed in natron salts for 40 days, a natural desiccant that drew out all moisture, preserving the flesh from decay. Finally, it was anointed with oils and resins and painstakingly wrapped in hundreds of yards of fine linen bandages, with protective amulets tucked within its folds. Once the mummy was prepared, the grand funeral procession began. The king's sarcophagus was placed on a funerary bark to be ferried across the Nile to the Valley Temple on the Giza Plateau. There, the most vital ceremony took place, the opening of the mouth. Priests would touch the mummy's mouth, eyes, and ears with ritual instruments, symbolically restoring its senses so that its spirit, or Ka, could see, speak, and partake of the offerings provided for it in the afterlife. The procession then moved up the causeway to the mortuary temple before the mummy was carried into the pyramid's dark interior. It was a journey through the ascending passage, past the grand gallery, and into the heart of the structure, the king's chamber. After the king was placed within his massive granite sarcophagus, the final act of sealing the tomb commenced. A team of workers, using a complex rope and pulley system, released a series of colossal granite plugs which slid down the ascending passage, blocking it forever. Further down, in the antechamber, 3 massive portcullis slabs of granite were lowered into place. The original entrance was disguised with casing stones to be indistinguishable from the rest of the pyramid's face. The great monument was now a sealed fortress, a silent, eternal home designed to protect the pharaoh's body and soul until the end of time. The Great Pyramid of Khufu, for all its colossal scale, did not stand in isolation. It was the centerpiece of a vast and intricate complex, a veritable city of the dead, meticulously designed to serve the pharaoh's needs in perpetuity. This necropolis was a functioning religious machine. At the pyramid's eastern base stood the mortuary temple. This was not a tomb, but a vibrant place of worship where priests would perform daily rituals, burning incense and leaving offerings of food and drink to nourish the king's eternal spirit, his Ka. Though little of it remains today, its basalt pavement and granite pillars would have formed a grand setting for the cult of the deceased king. Leading away from the mortuary temple was a long, covered causeway, stretching for nearly half a mile towards the Nile Valley. This enclosed corridor was not merely a walkway. Its walls were likely decorated with beautifully carved and painted reliefs depicting the pharaoh's divine authority, his victories, and his journey into the afterlife. The causeway terminated at the Valley Temple, located on the edge of the Giza floodplain. This temple acted as a reception, the formal entrance to the sacred precinct. It was here that the king's body would have been received after its journey across the Nile, and where the final purification and opening of the mouth rites likely began. Flanking the Great Pyramid to the east are three smaller, subsidiary pyramids. These are the tombs of Khufu's queens, including his mother Hetepheres. Though dwarfed by their husband's monument, they were essential for ensuring the royal family remained together in the afterlife. Surrounding this central core were meticulously organized fields of mastabas, flat-roofed rectangular tombs, laid out in a grid-like pattern. These were the final resting places for Khufu's relatives, high-ranking officials, and loyal nobles, all positioned to serve their king for eternity. Finally, buried in deep pits carved into the bedrock around the pyramid, were several full-sized solar barks, dismantled and interred to provide the king with transportation across the heavens with the sun god Ra. For over 3.5 millennia, the Great Pyramid held its secrets. It stood against the elements, a silent guardian of Khufu's eternal rest. While it's possible earlier, clandestine tomb robbers had tried their luck. The first documented large-scale breach occurred in the 9th century, around 820 AD. The man responsible was the Abbasid Caliph, Abdullah al-Mamun. A great patron of science and learning in Baghdad, al-Mamun was captivated by stories of ancient Egypt and the legends of immense treasures and secret knowledge, perhaps even astronomical charts or maps of the world hidden within the pyramid. He arrived at Giza with an army of engineers, scholars, and laborers determined to be the first to enter. His team, however, could not locate the original, cleverly concealed entrance on the pyramid's northern face. Undeterred, al-Mamun ordered his men to create a new one. They began chiseling away at the limestone blocks slightly below and to the west of the true entrance. It was a brutal, arduous task. According to Arab historians, they used massive battering rams and lit huge fires against the stone, then doused the superheated rock with cold vinegar, causing it to crack and splinter. Inch by inch, they forced their way into the pyramid's core, creating a rough, narrow tunnel that is still used by tourists today. After tunneling for about 100 feet, fate intervened. The vibrations from their work dislodged a limestone block in the ceiling of the descending passage just above them. The sound of the falling stone alerted the workers, who tunneled upwards and found themselves in the original corridor. But their path was blocked by the massive granite plugs that the ancient builders had slid into place to seal the ascending passage. These plugs, made of Aswan granite, were nearly indestructible. Once again, al-Mamun's men resorted to brute force, painstakingly tunneling a bypass around the hard granite. At last, they broke through into the clear passage beyond. They ascended the breathtaking grand gallery and explored the so-called Queen's Chamber. Finally, they entered the King's Chamber, the heart of the pyramid. They found the room stark, empty, and silent, containing nothing but a massive, lidless, and vacant granite sarcophagus. The legendary treasure was gone, if it had ever been there at all. Al-Mamun's quest for ancient wisdom and gold ended in anticlimax, leaving behind only a new entrance and an enduring mystery. The story of Anne Boleyn did not end with the swing of a French sword. In fact, her death was merely the beginning of a second life, one lived in the pages of history, drama, and debate. Like the ancient chroniclers piecing together the wonders of their world, early historians struggled to capture the truth of the Queen. In her own time, she was a figure of intense division. To the imperial ambassador Eustace Chapuis, she was the concubine, a venomous usurper who had bewitched the king. To Protestant reformers like John Fox, writing in the safety of her daughter's reign, she was a virtuous martyr, a godly woman brought down by papist conspiracy. For centuries, this dichotomy defined her. She was either a saint or a sinner, a witch or a victim. The Elizabethans, seeking to legitimize their queen and their church, canonized her memory, portraying her as the innocent mother of their glorious monarch. Later, Catholic historians revived the narrative of the ambitious, six-fingered homewrecker. It was not until the 19th century that a new Anne began to emerge. The Victorian era, with its fascination for tragic romance, recast her as a doomed heroine. A woman who loved not wisely, but too well, caught in the cruel gears of statecraft. This romanticized victim, however, still lacked agency. The true revolution in her historiography came in the 20th and 21st centuries. Academics like Eric Ives, Ratha Warnica, and G.W. Bernard began to scrape away the layers of myth and propaganda. They presented a new Anne, a shrewd politician, an educated and devout evangelical, a patron of the arts and learning, and a woman who actively pursued power, not just for her family, but for her cause. They argued, debated, and dissected every surviving letter and account, transforming her from a passive figure in Henry's story into a formidable force who changed England forever. To truly understand Anne Boleyn, historians must now act like forensic scientists, using modern techniques to analyze ancient evidence. The past is not a static text. It is a crime scene littered with clues, and our ability to interpret them grows more sophisticated with each passing year. We can metaphorically scan the primary sources with a new intensity. Take Anne's surviving letters to Henry. For centuries, they were read as simple love notes. Now, through linguistic analysis and a deeper understanding of courtly love conventions, we see layers of negotiation, ambition, and careful political maneuvering. We can apply a filter to the dispatches of ambassadors like Chapuis, digitally separating his factual observations from his vitriolic, politically motivated bias. This allows us to see the events he describes without the distortion of his hatred for Anne. Financial records and account books, once seen as dry and uninteresting, become revelatory under this new cosmic ray analysis. They trace the flow of money and influence, revealing Anne's extensive patronage network and her direct involvement in governance and religious reform, proving she was far more than a mere consort. Even the physical evidence is re-examined. While we lack confirmed remains for DNA testing, the 1876 exhumation of the skeletons in the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula provided a tantalizing glimpse. The report on the skeleton presumed to be Anne's described a delicate, slender frame, which aligns with contemporary descriptions. Modern forensic anthropology could tell us so much more about her life from those bones. This process is about unlocking the secrets trapped in the amber of the past, using every tool at our disposal to hear Anne's voice more clearly, filtering out the noise of 5 centuries of propaganda, to get closer to the woman she truly was. Just as some look to the stars to find patterns in stone, historians of Anne Boleyn search for a grand, unifying theory to explain the dizzying speed and brutality of her downfall. Her final weeks in 1536 remain one of history's most profound enigmas, a constellation of events so shocking it defies easy explanation. Was it simply the tragic trajectory of a king's volatile passions? Did Henry VIII, desperate for a son and infatuated with Jane Seymour, truly convince himself that the woman he had moved heaven and earth to marry was a monstrous adulterer and witch? This is the traditional narrative, placing the blame squarely on Henry's tyrannical whims and Anne's failure to produce a male heir. Yet many historians see a more deliberate, sinister pattern, a correlation theory of conspiracy. This theory posits that Anne was the victim of a political coup, masterminded by her former ally, Thomas Cromwell. By the spring of 1536, Anne and Cromwell were on a collision course over foreign policy and, crucially, the dissolution of the monasteries. Anne wanted the wealth to be redirected to charitable and educational institutions. Cromwell wanted it for the king's coffers. In this view, Cromwell saw that Anne's influence was a direct threat to his own power and agenda. He allegedly exploited the king's anxieties, weaving a web of manufactured evidence, coerced confessions from terrified courtiers, and outlandish accusations of incest and treason. He aligned the stars against her, creating a pattern of guilt where none existed. The speed of the trials, the flimsy nature of the evidence, and the convenient removal of a major political obstacle all point towards a coordinated plot. This enduring enigma forces us to question everything. Was Anne a victim of love's decay? Or was she a casualty of a cold, calculated political assassination? The truth remains elusive, a mystery as debated and compelling as any ancient wonder. A Great Pyramid is not built to be forgotten. It is a testament, a statement of power and belief intended to last for eternity. Anne Boleyn left no such tomb of stone, her body laid to rest in an unmarked grave. Yet, she built 2 monuments far more enduring than any physical structure. The first was her daughter. Elizabeth the Reign was Anne's living legacy, the ultimate vindication of her mother's life and death. In her daughter, Anne's intelligence, charisma, and iron will were reborn and magnified. Elizabeth's long and glorious reign, the Golden Age, was the fulfillment of everything Anne had fought for. She established a stable Protestant church, defeated foreign enemies, and ruled with a political acumen that her father Henry would have envied. Elizabeth rarely spoke of her mother, but she didn't have to. She honored Anne by embodying her strengths and succeeding where she had been tragically cut short. Anne's second, and perhaps greater monument, was the very nation of England itself. While Henry's desire for a divorce was the catalyst for the break with Rome, it was Anne's fervent evangelical faith and her circle of reformers that gave the English Reformation its soul and direction. She was not merely the reason for the change. She was one of its key architects. Her execution transformed her into a Protestant martyr, a foundational figure for the new Church of England. Her story became a cautionary tale and a rallying cry that shaped the nation's identity for centuries. This is Anne Boleyn's timeless message. that the actions of a single, determined individual can alter the course of history. Her legacy is not carved in stone, but is woven into the very fabric of the modern world, a testament to the Queen, who was prepared to die for her convictions and, in her own way, for love.